Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andriy Shevchenko. On behalf of the team of the Media Center Ukraine, I welcome all of the journalists telling the world about our struggle for freedom. Today, we want to tell you about a summit of volunteer and humanitarian initiatives that is taking place in the Lviv region at the moment. I would like to give the floor to Oleksandr Kulepin, Deputy Head of Lviv Oblast Military Administration. Hello? Alexander, the Lviv Regional Military Administration was an organizer of this summit. Could you tell us what is the purpose? Since the start of the war, the Lviv region was a humanitarian hub for the entire Ukraine. We've cooperated as a, as a, as a body of authority with many volunteer and donor organizations, and we see that volunteers need support. They need um, to exchange experience, to train, to exchange their contacts. And these three subjects were among the most important for our summit. We would we wanted smaller volunteer organizations to learn from bigger volunteer organizations to avoid legal mistakes, because a time will come when they'll have to report, and we do not want them to suffer. We want them to have fewer questions, face fewer questions from law enforcement bodies, and we wanted to talk about what we could do better as authorities. So this has been a proactive stance of the Lviv military administration. I would like to give the floor to Olha Martynovska, volunteer. Pani Olha, you are a participant of this summit of humanitarian volunteer and humanitarian initiatives. Could you tell us what is the purpose of this summit for the volunteers? Right, first of all, hello everyone. So for volunteers, first of all, this was kind of an attempt to bring together different efforts to understand where we have our points, common points, to have this kind of synergy with all these different movements that provide support, and to share our experience, to discuss, to talk with the authorities, to talk about some key issues, to show where we might be stronger, where we might need help. So this summit is primarily aimed at understanding and getting a common um, talk about things that matter to us in our victory. What conclusions have you drawn? I think that it's very good that we have finally come together, that we've had the opportunity to exchange our experience. That it is thanks to this that we have this roadmap that will help us speed up providing humanitarian aid to the ultimate beneficiaries. Because whereas the necessity, we've been talking about the need for this. Our needs 3 months ago were very different from our needs today, particularly for the IDPs who find themselves in the localities where they have been placed. And we understand that these people will need to find new homes um, because they need to leave particular schools or kindergartens for the summer, and so we have questions that go beyond food and hygiene. We have to find ways. We have to talk to the authorities to find spaces to move these IDPs there, people who have lost their homes. You represent the Grupa Vplyvu impact group organization. What projects do you do? We have fast aid project with the UNDP, and the idea was that we would provide aid in 5 regions in Ukraine. We would provide fast aid to those IDPs who needed help the most, people with disabilities. In Ternopil region, we managed to create a shelter for people with disabilities. We were able to buy humanitarian and first necessities, humanitarian aid and first necessities, and medications. This project has ended now, but at the same time, friends have turned to me, and friends of friends have turned to us, who have helped us, who, along together, for instance, with the most charity fund through the people in need, have given us humanitarian aid, specifically with food. And in some regions of our country, we sent this aid to some regions of our country, like Kyiv, Zhytomyr, Sumy, the places that were the hardest hit in the earliest days of the wars. If we have questions from the room, please let us know. I just wanted to ask about the relationship between the volunteer movement and the authorities. The summits such as these and this kind of active volunteer involvement, does it mean that the authorities are underperforming? I will perhaps address the question to Oleksandr. I think that holding a summit like this shows, on the contrary, that the authorities are taking a proactive stance in terms of seeing a need for cooperation, coordination of volunteers, and we want to help the volunteers. At the same time, yesterday, when we were discussing in a panel, we were discussing cooperation, there was a sense that yes, the volunteers want more communication with authorities. They see problems, they see that what the authorities are doing, and they're also prepared to hear. We're not hearing statements anymore that like, are we as authorities, are we in the way or are we underperforming? There is a sense that like, if it was only the authorities working on this war or only the volunteers, it would be a lot worse for everyone. But thankfully, we're all reinforcing each other. It's good that we have so much leadership on all levels, and civil society is taking such an active role in the country. Question?
Good afternoon.
My name is Howard Dotson, and this is my third trip to Lviv. I'm an art therapist and a mental health clinician. So my question is about the psychosocial support for the refugee children, and if you feel like it's adequate or how we can support that consortium of volunteers to get more mental health professionals here.
Regarding refugee, or чи з вашого дозволу на український відповім, що всі
I'll answer in Ukrainian if you don't mind. So the region has helped many children as far as evacuating the children with their parents or without their parents. Lviv is definitely a hub in this sense, and we've put up some of these children in Lviv in special homes or other places where we could provide proper conditions for them. We've also moved many children to the EU, and we're very grateful to the EU here for responding quickly and creating conditions so that we can ensure a decent life for these kids. Additionally, the Lviv region has started a project on good summer for these kids, because we wouldn't want these kids to be completely and long-term traumatized by this war. So earlier we've done certain events in the Ururu Park to and then this Sunday we're planning to hold um, in a city in the Lviv region. We'll have this event for children without parents, so they can enjoy life. So we really want that, because we want to ensure better mental health for them. The volunteer movement in Ukraine today is almost a world-class phenomenon, which impresses many people who run into who experienced Ukraine. It's the people who are buying Bayraktari, people who run evacuations, who do some vast amounts of humanitarian aids. When international commentators ask you about the phenomenon of Ukrainian volunteer movement, how would you explain this? Maybe I will let Olha take this one. Thank you. Well, it seems to me that the phenomenon is that we don't want to be subjugated by anyone or anything, and many people are prepared to take on the responsibility. We understand, we identify the fact that we're Ukrainians, Ukrainian men and women, and it's very important for us to help, because we really understand that the entire country is part of the volunteer movement in a sense, including the army. You know, it's not normal when women are massively taking up arms, but when they are also helping in the rear, I've had numerous examples when women would do things that would astonish us all. Just as an example, there was a story when at a summit we had a girl telling us about finding phone numbers of arms traders in the United States, and they were very surprised how she had the gall to kind of to write that, to call them unofficially and tell them about needing particular weapons. And she, in the end, she said, "Look, it so happens I'm Ukrainian. We need weapons." And so she got everything she required at the time. And it just seems to me that we're going through this phase where we believe in our victory, which makes us more invincible. We have trust in our territorial defense, in our armed forces, in our medics, all of those who help us, who help us bring us victory, our victory closer. A question for either you or for Oleksandr. We've had about 200 participants at this summit, representatives of volunteer, humanitarian initiatives. Was there a story that particularly stand out to you? perhaps for me, it was the story of a volunteer heading an organization from a small village in the Chernihiv region. This is the place where they were stopping tanks as they were reversing, where they were stopping tanks unarmed. And I was most impressed when he says, you know, when you're under occupation, all of these property, money, all of this loses any sense because both the rich and the poor are in the same boat and they're standing on the same lines for bread and milk because nobody has anything, which is a huge unifying factor. And I really hope that Ukraine will all unify after this war. We'll no longer have East or West, we'll have this one strong Ukraine that will be then invited to join international organizations rather than having to beg to join. I was very. I just also wanted to add. This is Koryukivka in the Chernihiv region. What Oleksandr said. It really show. This is really shown on YouTube when people would stop uh, enemies' technology, and the enemy would be flabbergasted. Well, what's happening? How can people unarmed oppose uh, armored vehicles and tanks? I was very impressed by the story of our children and the stories of our children who are helping however they can. Some sell their paintings, some sing, some give their savings. They're literally their piggy bank savings that they've been saving for some dream or other. I am impressed that we have managed to raise a generation of children that really make us unstoppable when the old and the young of the population of your country is joining in the effort with everything they have, whether financially, whether in terms of time, volunteer effort, human resources, or when they get their near and dear involved. I think that is the I think that is something that is remarkable, and I think that is something that should bring our victory nearer. Olha Martynovska, Impact Group, and Oleksandr Kulepin, Deputy Head of the Lviv Military Administration. Thank you for this conversation. This concludes our briefing program for the day. Please watch our announcement.